Tony. You're still missing it, aren't you?
In my head. Yeah.
It's been like it's been like 2.5 months now.
It doesn't matter. That became like they became one thing. Like the intro to the show and the Path Solutions ad music became one thing, you know, and that's just the way it was. Yeah, and it was good music. You did a good selection there.
Nice.
How's it going?
Good, very good. It's been. I feel like we have the same conversation every time we come on. It's been crazy. Yeah. And every week it's for some, or every time we come on, it's for some other reason. But it's been crazy. It's been really, really busy. I have a medical procedure I'm going in for next week. And so there's been a couple weeks of like pre-op testing and different things like that have just been invasive of my schedule, which has made the rest of my schedule just become untenable.
Yeah,
and unmanageable.
Suffers. Yeah,
it suffers. And then on top of that, I think we talked about this before. My coworker at work had left and went on and went to another job. We're trying to fill his position, and we're doing a bunch around that. But I'm also carrying the load of what was mine and what he had going on at work, and so the two coming together has been interesting. It's been an interesting couple of weeks. But I have one more appointment tomorrow before all this happens. And then this procedure happens next week. So there's an end in sight and some rest. I don't know if rest after surgery is something that you look forward to, but I'm kind of looking forward to it because after surgery, I've got some time off and it's just going to be recovery. I'm not going to be hectic getting around to all the things that we're doing. How about you, man? What have you been up to?
Oh my gosh. Like you, very, very busy at work. And, you know, I think I told you before, sometimes it's a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because for me, like boredom kills me. You know what I mean? When things are slow, it kills me. I love when we can move through projects and move through tasks and solve problems and push out projects and products and stuff. I love that sort of fast pace, but then it gets to a point where you're spread so thin, it seems like you're like sprinting everywhere, but going nowhere. You know, it kind of feels like that sometimes. So very, very busy at work, pulled onto many different projects in various roles to contribute. And my personal life here, it just never slows down. We're starting to get into the summer rhythm, right? Mm-hmm. It's now June 2nd. So the pool just opened, the little community pool just opened. We were members for the first time last year, but because of COVID, everything closed down. So we didn't even we lived here 5 years. We didn't even get to go in. So now, keeping safe distance, the kids are able to get in and splash. You know, my two oldest ones can swim together and do something out of the house that doesn't involve a lit screen in front of them.
Oh, that's nice. Yes.
That's the biggest thing. I got some contractors at the house. They're doing some work. I got lots of cool stuff going on here at the home network. I always do because I sit back at nighttime. Look, I lay in my bed. I lay there with the phone over my face. I know this is like terrible. I lay there with the phone over my face. I'm scrolling all night long, but then I'll read I'll be on Twitter and I'll see like someone published a blog and then I'll read that blog and then I'll click on another link and I'll go down the rabbit hole until I realize like, oh man, that's a really cool idea. I wonder if I could do that. And next thing you know, it's 1, 2 in the morning and I'm trying to do what they've done. And so I have a lot going on, and like my work, I'm spreading myself so thin here at home. I'm getting none of these projects done. You know,
it's amazing how that works.
I'm just, I need some time to wrangle my time management is what I need to do. I haven't been managing my own time properly, but it's okay because I'm enjoying the chaos. Sometimes there's a lull. Like I said, when things are just a little bit boring, there's not a whole lot going on, you have a lot of time, and that just kills me. It demotivates me. But then when things start to pick up and it's a little bit chaotic like this, you know, you kind of get, for me, it gets my energy back. You know, I feel excited about projects and I'm happy to contribute. And then there's that breaking point where it's like, it's just too much to handle. So I'm trying to do like a TCP congestion algorithm, right? I'm trying to just float right below where packet loss begins.
Figure out what that window is and move in that window space. Absolutely.
Everything relates to networking. Everything relates to networking. It always does.
Oh, there's already a recommendation, so we'll pull it up here because.
Okay. Definitely recommend you Deep Work by Cal Newport. I hope that's something I can grab on Audible.
Yeah, it's not one I've read. I've heard that recommended multiple times. I probably should read that one as well. I'm sure. Let me try to summarize. Let me try to summarize. Work on one thing at a time. Don't allow distractions in. Turn off all notifications. Obvious, right? But I'm sure there's something to learn.
There's no secret to it. And what was that book you recommended some time ago, Jordan? I know I didn't grab it on Audible, and it was about like you had described it many times. We've bumped into it when you talk about like the collective. What do you call it?
Cognitive bias.
Collective cognitive bias. Yeah, you said there was a book where you got that from. What was that book called? Let
me get the exact title here. Thinking Fast and Slow is the name of the book, and it's by Daniel Kahneman. He's an economist, I believe, but he started digging into like the psychology of the way people think, and I found a lot of value in it, in just in general about finding. It's not necessarily, I mean, you can read about cognitive biases. Just go out on Wikipedia and do a search for cognitive biases, and you get a huge long list, and some of them are very interesting, and that's actually an interesting exercise if you ever want to do that. But it's not just good enough to know them, it's understanding why we have them and how they affect us. And to give like the really, really snippet summary, just in case someone who's listening now who hasn't read it, who might be interested, essentially the hypothesis or the thing that he's writing about is that we really have two ways of thinking. And we have the fast mode of thinking and the slow mode of thinking. And the slow mode of thinking is like that real logical, sit down, ponder something, like put effort into thinking. And that effort is actually the key thing, because the fast way of thinking is the shortcut. It's the short circuit. And we have that for a reason, right? This is a whole fight or flight response when we're in danger, right? Like there are things and our brains are uniquely capable of doing that are able to short circuit that whole thought process. We don't have to sit down and go, that's a bear over there. I wonder what I should do. Like it is an immediate response because we're able to bring lots of data together and assess it very, very quickly in situations, at least that we're familiar with, or that we've been taught how to handle. The funny thing is how that creeps in and starts giving you false positives. And that's where cognitive biases come in, is in that fast way of thinking when it gives you bad results. And so I see it like it's I think a huge thing in troubleshooting. When you're talking about troubleshooting a network, cognitive bias is one of those things that you have to have a handle on, because there's, sunk cost fallacy. I've already invested so much time into this path. I can't leave this path because I've invested this much time. But the reality is, like, we don't see it this way. Our brains don't want to see it this way. But the reality is it doesn't matter how much time you've invested. If it's the wrong path, it's the wrong path, right? So like you need to work against those biases. Another popular one that people like to talk about is bike shedding. So we all like to have control. We all like to be in a situation where we can, manipulate the outcome. And when we're in situations where we don't have control, or the problem is somehow bigger than what our mind can grasp, we will gravitate towards a problem we can control. And so it's called bike shedding, because you have, you could be talking about some major infrastructure project and you get into a meeting and somehow you spend 30 minutes talking about the paint color. And that's because the paint color is something that people can fathom and can talk about, and it feels like you're making a contribution, when in reality you need to figure out all of the complexities of building something, or all of whatever. You get the idea. And it's really interesting because he steps through a bunch of these different scenarios and thinking fast, thinking slow, and kind of giving you a feel for how your brain interprets different situations. And I think it's one of those like self-awareness type books. Like it's good to be self-aware of the way your brain works, because it will lead you astray.
You have brought it up on live stream and during podcasts many times. You've referenced it even at times when we're not recording. You've pulled references from it, and it's one of those that I just haven't put on my Audible list. But now I have them both down here. I see Jair in chat recommends them both. So Deep Work by Cal Newport and Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. Is that what you said?
Kahneman. It's a
Kahneman.
Yeah, and
okay, no problem.
Kahneman. But yeah, it's a popular book. If you just look up Thinking Fast and Slow, you'll find it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Very cool. Yeah.
Last night he just spent his whole afternoon planning SFPs. He's feeling guilty about bike shedding.
I was going to say, I definitely, I feel like I stepped into that in a meeting today. There's a rather complex system with lots of engineers contributing for a very quick turnaround on a very short deadline. And someone built a Flask app as a front end to sort of abstract away some complexities. And that's what I gravitated to. I'm like, I understand a web GUI. Like, give me the web GUI. I don't understand all the code that's behind it, but I understand what happens when I click these buttons that say deploy and undeploy. You know, I know what they mean, and I feel that sometimes you do.
Yeah, and there's nothing inherently wrong with the cognitive bias. Right. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. It's there for a reason. It's just understanding what it is and how it can lead you astray, where you can start seeing it. There's another one. I forget what the bias is called, but essentially we attach ourselves to the first hypothesis. So this is the one. This is the big one in troubleshooting. It's like we have a feel for what it is, and this is how I explain how it's important and how it works. Is that the reason why it's important for troubleshooting is we go in. And there is something about expertise, that whole repetition. I've done this. I've seen this before. I know, Tony, you've done this, and I'm sure people who are listening or watching. You walk into a troubleshooting situation, and it just feels like something. Like you just know. Like when you start hearing the symptoms, it's like, you know, and we joke about it, but it's often DNS or whatever, but you get the idea. But you walk in and it's like, hey, this isn't working. This isn't working. This isn't working. This is, symptom A, B, and C. And you'd be like, I've been here before. Right? I've been here before. This is super familiar. I can tell you exactly what the problem is. And that's intuition. That's that fast way of thinking. It's incredibly valuable. And as we go through and get more experience, like it's one of those things that really sets you apart as an expert. But here's the thing. The more of an expert you become, the more viable you are to latch on to that first theory and not let it go. Right. And so while it feels a lot like it, you need to be looking for evidence that disproves your theory.
I was just getting ready to say that. And I, for one, am guilty of this phenomenon that you're discussing.
Everybody listening has done this.
100%. And what we often try to do is we try to find, I typically do this not so much in troubleshooting because I don't do that a lot anymore. But when it comes to deep diving packets, right? Sort of as an analyst, you're asking a lot of the same questions, just a different point of view, sort of. And often you'll find yourself trying to prove yourself right. You're looking for artifacts to support your hypothesis. Right. And what I have found is to actually do the opposite. Try to find the artifacts that disprove your hypothesis.
That's what you should be doing.
That becomes far more revealing. Yep. If you can't, then you're already supporting your hypothesis. You're already justifying the story. And if you can, you're pulling on the thread in the right direction. If you can disprove your hypothesis, you're pulling the thread the right direction because that means you had the wrong thread initially. Now you're over here now.
It gets there faster.
Absolutely. But it's something you have to be aware of.
Right.
It's something you have to be aware of.
Right. I'm sitting here. I'm like, this is a really common one. Why cannot think of it? It's called confirmation bias. So when we step into something, and confirmation bias is that we will look to and believe evidence that supports our theory, and we will dismiss evidence that disproves it. And so you have to be very intentional in your way of thinking when you're going to troubleshoot something. And that isn't to say that intuition isn't valuable. It's incredibly valuable because that is what expertise really brings. That idea that you can step into a situation, and I've seen it all. I've done it all. Not really all, but you've done enough, right? That you can go in and you've seen the situation and you can resolve it quickly because you know what those symptoms are and you know where to look. Like I can tell you, I've experienced it multiple times, a bridging loop because of a misconfiguration of spanning tree. I know what that looks and feels like. because it's weird and it's random, right? Like there's just a feel to it. Like all of a sudden switches just straight up aren't working. They're falling off the network. There's no real explanation except for the processor super high. Like these are all symptoms. And you look at that, it's like that's a bridging loop, right? But if you go in and you start looking and you start realizing that, wait a minute, no, that's not the problem. And maybe you're like actually under a DDoS or something. I don't know. Like it could be any number of other things that have a, some sort of constraint, resource constraint exhaustion. Preston says, I think my coworkers only ever use their fast thinking while at work. Most people do. That's the value of the book, right? And it's not that we just use fast thinking. We use fast thinking more often than slow thinking because slow thinking requires energy. Slow thinking requires intentionality. And so with that, it takes effort and energy, and our bodies actually try not to. We try to think fast if we can, and that's where it leads us. Speaking of books, we're talking about books. And and you have been reading a book that we brought up a couple weeks ago. So I want you to talk about that.
Yeah. Well, actually, was it a couple weeks ago now? Oh my gosh. Yeah, it was. This is funny because you can't see the cover because it's green.
Color as your green screen.
Exact green as the green screen behind me. This is the Automate Your Network from John Campobianco, who came on and shared with us now 2 weeks ago. It came in the mail. I opted for the hard copy. I'm a very tactile person. I love a hard copy book. This is actually, let me give you something like, I don't know if what I'm trying to describe is like a little bit like meta, but this isn't a textbook, but reference books like this, technical books, are typically smaller. And I'm trying to think, like I have a whole stack of them over there just out of reach. I can't get. They're much smaller than this book. This is actually like a wide book. It's larger than a sheet of paper. It's larger than an 8.5 by 11. And I bring this up because it's a little different size than you're used to, but it is much better to read technical materials because it's, the commands and the configs aren't word wrapped. They're not down on the next line. You can get much more characters across horizontally. Not that that's a big deal. It's just a little bit different than like the size of the Cisco text. You guys know, if everyone here on the streams, networking, someone has Cisco texts, you can line them up on your bookshelf. They're all exactly the same size. So coming up from that to this size is just a much easier read. Okay, I wanted to bring this up because I bought the book because I really wanted to get into it. I am a bit very slow in starting my automation journey, and there's a ton of buzzwords out there. There's an overwhelming amount of material, and I didn't know where to begin. John is an awesome community member and an awesome community supporter. So I know when he's going to write something that he's passionate about, he's putting it in a nice logical way. And that's kind of what I needed. This is laid out in a nice logical order. And this takes you through the very beginnings of automation. Why do we need it? What problems can we solve? How to begin so it's not overwhelming. This is super cool. This book is a lot of Ansible stuff, and it finishes up with sort of an entire CI/CD pipeline, sort of leaving you with the framework to build a CI/CD pipeline, sort of take what you've learned from here and here's how you apply it. And I think that has been super, super awesome. So I've just dove in. I'm still very early in reading the book, but I'm very excited because I've gotten to use a little bit of this. I've actually started writing a few Ansible playbooks, which is something that I've never done just from scratch. I haven't had to do yet. I can read YAML a little bit. I can count what things are doing. I understand the Jinja templates. Like I get that, but actually wrapping it all together and doing something functional out of it. This book has given me a little bit of the know-how, right? It just kind of simplifies some things that I had questions about, and it's given me the confidence to dive right in. So spinning up a couple of VMs and logging into devices with Ansible has been pretty rewarding, and it's really cool. When you run that playbook and everything comes back green, and you've made templated changes across devices, you start to really realize what the value of automation can bring, and it's making me sort of dream big. And I don't know if I'll ever get as big as my ideas, the experience level of my ideas, but it's making me sort of want to implement an entire CI/CD pipeline using like GitLab, using Basically, that's how we accept changes, or that's how we document the communication about what changes need to be made. Have one of the engineers do a pull request, right? And then we, as the masters, get to pull that in. And when we do, I want it to go through Travis or Jenkins and kick off a little bit of automation to validate some of the config. There's a couple of controls we can put around it, at least to look for certain things, to make sure that this VLAN is always on there and never not on a trunk because it's the management VLAN, stuff like that. And then actually be able to kick off automation to push those changes and then give you the Ansible output as part of your comments. I just think that whole pipeline, it can really get very fragmented, but it's a pretty sweet thing when it all works together. And there's a lot of software out there and a lot of tooling that has been done to make it as frictionless as possible. I mean, Network to Code is pushing out all kinds of stuff. I just saw a blog from them the other day. Just this week, gosh, I can't remember the title of it. Network to Code. Oh, it's called NetUtils. Here it is. Introducing NetUtils. June 1 came out yesterday. So this is pretty cool. I mean, this is not something I'm ready to deal with yet, but this is something that dealing with John's book has helped give me the confidence to start to really understand how we can use automation in lots of different ways. I'm looking at my company. I have a small company still, and I think automation has typically been pointed at the large enterprise, been pointed at those organizations that have hundreds, thousands of switches they need to update NTP on and SNMP and make changes and things like that. And that was going to save you lots of time and effort and save you from human error. And my company is a small company. We don't have that. We have 3 sites. We probably have 10 or 12 switches total, I have 3 edge devices, router firewall combinations. And, it's pretty simple. I don't know how much automation is going to save us from repeating tasks. But what it's going to save us is that someone doesn't have to log in and make these changes. If we build the playbooks correctly and we build the proper validation and checking ahead of time, then anyone should be able to run these playbooks. And I think that's the value that it would bring even to a small company. And so I'm getting that, out of this book. I think it's very cool. I have a hard time with scripting automation. I have a hard time just understanding those concepts. I don't really come from a computer science background. So I don't know. I don't have the history of it. I really needed it sort of broken down for me. And this book has done that in a very communicable way. Like just 2 guys sitting around talking about cool projects. That's what this book is like, reading it. It is very cool. It is not so deep in the weeds that you can't understand it or follow.
That's good. It's approachable.
Super.
That I think that that narrative around automation's only for large companies. I sure hope that's changing, because it's not just about mass deployment. There's so much about consistency. We as humans make mistakes often, right? So putting it through some sort of pipeline, doing it through code, having it reviewed, even if it's not a big environment, there's a lot of value to that.
Exactly.
But Preston brings up a good point about SMB. So if you're working in that like managed services, managing for smaller businesses or SMB, it can be hard. I know Jody Lemoyne, who's been on several podcasts. He's in the Network Collective Slack. He's around Ghost in the Net on Twitter if you follow. He basically has built a business around serving like the small to mid-sized business in his region. He's basically a regional. I don't know if I call it MSP. He might call it MSP. I don't know, but he's like he's a consultant and helps people out, right? Like in that space, in that region. And he's built a lot around different things, but he chooses the gear, specifically around what can he automate, what can he manage, and does it really fulfill the networking needs for his customers? Like, I know he gives Meraki a hard time. He's going to have to like take some of that back here in the near future because they didn't implement IPv6. Right. And I know Meraki either is out or is coming out with IPv6 in the near future. So like that's a thing we're not going to be able to rag on them for much longer about that. But yeah, so being careful about how you choose gear. It's not just about the dollar amount. Sometimes it's about the features. But we definitely see in the SMB space where this can be more challenging. You're not going to get that, Netgear switch to do a configuration for you or something. It's going to be very difficult to bring that into an Ansible playbook. But most of the primary vendors are doing it. So it's not about size. Once you get into using, fill in the blank of network, gear vendor. Let's see. Thomas has a comment here. So automation is for everyone. The problem with automation is the barrier of entry, how much time you need to spend for how much benefit. And I agree with that. I think that the challenge around that is I think we're either in the infant or toddler stages of automation. I still think we're trying to figure out there's no like one overarching automation strategy. There's a lot of different tools and tooling. I kind of equate it to like the early days of Linux, where Linux was great. It was really flexible, really powerful. You could get a lot out of it and it absolutely made sense, but you had to invest quite a bit into making it run. And Land Tamer, you just got confused with Land Tamer. Nice. Both good guys, but no, not the same person. But it required a lot of investment. But just like Linux, although Linux took a long time to get to this point, but I think it will be faster with automation. I think we're going to see more robust tools. I think that as they come out, they're going to be more robust. I also think, we could talk about automation. Like, I think that with automation, all this stuff is really important and understanding the components are there. But I think that the interim ground is this whole scripting or, Ansible or Terraform. I think that a lot of these systems are gonna be orchestrated. And so you're gonna interface with the orchestrator rather than building the orchestrator, which is what you're doing a lot with Ansible. And we're seeing some of that already happen. And so it'll be interesting to see where it goes in the long term.
Yeah, I posted a link in chat a little while ago, which is the link to the blog on Network to Code.
Network to Code. Yep.
Yeah, so the netutils, Python library that got released is doing some simple things, and I think you're absolutely right. We're either in the infancy or as a toddler as far as automation goes, as far as scripting goes. This, I think, is starting to take the right step for me, which is it's doing things like when you do switch port trunk allowed VLAN, 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 and then you do it again, right? We all know what that does when you do it manually, right? It overwrites, it's not additive.
Right.
What this library will do, it will look and check, and it will add the add command in there for you. So it goes ahead and looks to see like your range of VLANs, how many are you intending to configure, and if they're in two groups, and then when you do it a second time, it adds the add to the same. Like simple things like that. I think that's just going to be part of every library soon, at least for Cisco products until they change the way that works. They'll never change how that is. It's too ingrained in everything at this point.
I think that making it retroactively compatible is more important than fixing that little nuance.
Here's one that NetUtils does. This is just from their blog. That, about 3/4 of the way down, they have a section called Quick Hits. These are like the quick solutions that this thing can do for you. I love this one. Compare a Cisco Type 5 hash. So I do a compare Type 5. I give it my password and the hash from the config, and it tells me,
do they match?
If that's what it is, if they match. So I think that's super useful in being able to compare configs across multiple devices. Right. It's just there's just a ton of cool stuff here. I think it's very cool. I'm not at this level yet, but I see this. I see this in my near future. Like, okay, a lot of the error checking and things that I would be building from scratch, people are already doing. So we're having a little bit of that, and I think it's not lowering the bar, I wouldn't say, but it's definitely making things slide a bit easier. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. And as we get more robust tools, I think that, again, I think everything we have today is a good step. And it's more mature than what we had a year ago or 2 years ago, and it continues to mature. I just think that we're on a path that's probably going to take, 10 to 15 years to fully mature and get into the point where, we have, true automation. I just had a conversation with a customer, and their question basically was like this, and we're talking like Fortune 100 customer here. So like these are well-resourced individuals. And they're talking and they're like, well, there's a whole lot of people talking about automation, and we feel like we're behind. Like that's kind of their impression. They feel like they're behind. They might feel like you, Tony, like they're just starting, or they're just talking about it. And then they're like, but then again, we've hired people from all of the other major vendors in their space. I'll just call it the space, global financial space. They've hired people from all those other places and talked to them. And they're like, what was it like at this other place, like around automation? And they're like, we're the most mature out of the bunch. And so the reality is, I think a lot of us are talking about it. There's a lot of us see the value out of it. I think it's really hard to come up with a cohesive strategy. And I know that there are companies that have. So I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm not calling it a unicorn or anything like that. It absolutely exists. I just think that, and I think we've talked about it, it's probably been a while, but like as your problem set becomes larger, the harder it is to automate. And so we look at the cloud, the cloud vendors and say, well, everything's automated. You just point and click and off it goes, right? But how many actual products do they have where they have to automate that thing? Like they can spend months automating that one thing before they release it as a product. And then once it's released, they don't have to touch it again. They spend all their time automating the next product and how it launches to make sure that it launches and works with everything else. And cloud networks, while they're massive and they have a lot of data, are actually a little less complex, right? Than when you talk about like networks. They're not less complex. Maybe I should rephrase this. The job of a network engineer on one of those networks is very, very different than a network engineer who works on an enterprise network, where you have thousands of applications and you don't really have any controls or constraints about what those applications are. And that all defines what the automation is. What do those traffic flows look like? Where are our devices? What can I do? What can't I do? And so it becomes a bit more challenging in environments with less constraints. And so if you have a really constrained environment where it's very well defined and you do X, Y, and Z, you can have a fully automated environment. The reality is most of us will fall somewhere in the middle, that we'll be able to automate a lot of things and provide a lot of value, but you're not going to be able to push button, you know what I'm saying, for everything that is a network related function because of the fact that there's just too many variables involved with some components of the network. Maybe that changes over time. I don't know, because the value of automation, maybe we find constraints and controls around this, but I don't see that happening in the very near term. And so I think that what we're going to see portions of networks automated. It's not like everyone's automating everything, but what you're doing is the right step. It's getting into it, figuring out where it can provide value, get it immediate value out of it, and start doing something with it, and then build and keep building and keep building. And then when you start getting that grand vision, start realizing what those gaps are and start working that as a project, like and figure out what those tools are. It's going to take a lot of time, but it is a really interesting time in our industry.
Yeah, I love it. It's something I've been scared of for a long time, was diving into automation. I just didn't think I had the time to learn something new and worry about certifications and studying and everything else. And I thought it was just a bit overwhelming. New terminology, new tools, new vendors, new everything. It's a whole new world. And I'm glad I have John's book here. I keep plugging it because I think it's great. I have John's book here. And for me, if you're in the same boat who's just been a little bit standoffish on automation, you really haven't dove in the way so many others have, and you need the easy path. I'm not saying it's an easy path, but you need it explained to you more simply. This is the way. He does a great job of that. One of the projects that I started working on was I even built a Flask app, right? So I started getting into a little bit of Python and trying to mix that with a little bit of templating, a little Jinja, a little Ansible, and trying to get that all wrapped up into like GitLab, doing pull requests. And I don't have it all stitched together yet, but here's my idea. If anyone out there has a better way to do it or anything more simply, I'd love to hear it. I'm trying to create a simple self-service portal for people to be able to carve out portions of the network for themselves. And here's what I mean. I have tons of teams at my work, tons of developers that work on tons of different projects. And each one, when they need to spin up a VM or groups of VMs or containers or anything else, they're like, I need to spin up these VMs. Oh, and I need to connect these bunch of hardware. And those VMs need to be able to talk to this hardware. So we have, one, VMware cluster that everyone has access to who needs a project, who's within our company. So a network engineer has to go and look which VLANs are taken and provision an unused VLAN. We have to make sure that VLAN is trunked over to VMware. Then we have to make sure that VLAN is access ports on ports that are available on the switches so that they can connect hardware in the loop to virtual appliances. And then also we need to give them on the a default gateway, so that they can route outbound. Maybe they just need to route to another VLAN, or maybe they need to route out to the internet. So then I need to make a couple of NAT rules. I also need to define some firewall rules so that they can only stay within their enclave and can only reach out to the internet, but none of the other subnets or VLANs that exist, right? So right now, someone has to do all of that. It's a manual process. Now, for me to jump in and do it, it's only about 15 minutes if I'm well versed. If I've done it recently, I know which switches to log into. I got everything, templated out on my notepad, the way we always do it. But there's a better way. We can start making the playbooks that do these repeatable tasks. And I'm trying to build a self-service portal so that when Jordan comes in and he says, look, hey, I got this new project we're doing. It's for contract such and such. I need to install about 3 VMs. They have to be on this VLAN. Also, they sent me this appliance. I'm going to rack it. I need 2 ports for that. I need one for management and I need one for data. Hey, just put all that in a self-service portal. Select the VLAN, select the ports you want. I'll tell you which ones are available, which ones aren't. I'll define subnets for you. I think the whole thing I'm doing also is putting Netbox in the middle and using that as, I loved reading this in a blog, and I forget who said it, but it wasn't just that Netbox becomes this source of truth as it's referred to so often, but it's become like the intended truth. And what that means is like, I can make changes in Netbox and use a webhook, right? To then say, go ahead and put and build a playbook or run a playbook against these new changes. So if I add a VLAN to a device here, it will go ahead and kick off automation to actually do that. And so be able to tie that all together. So I don't have to actually log into the switches and see which VLANs are available. I should be able to just ask Netbox. And Netbox has some really awesome API that I was diving into. And it's semi-recent. It wasn't in older versions, which was, I forget the exact API call, but the gist of it is, give me the next available subnet. Give me the next available VLAN. So that's super cool, right? So you can define a supernet, a large subnet, like a /16, and then you can say, I can start provisioning manually or enter the data a couple of /24s, a /24, a /24, a /24. So the first 3 are taken, and I need to provision the next /24. You can just do an API call that says, give me the next /24, and it will provision that for you and allow you to write to it the basic data, the name of it, and any of the tags that need to go in there. So that's super cool. It does that for VLAN. I think it does it for VLANs. It does it for subnets and a couple other ones. Right, so that's just it. If I have a self-service portal and Jordan comes up, Jordan doesn't actually need to define a subnet. You don't actually need to know anything about networking. You just need to say, I need a subnet, right? And I'll go ahead and pull Netbox and say, give me the next available subnet and assign it to this project. And that's what I'm getting to. That's where I'm realizing the value of this automation is that I no longer have to do these things personally. I just have to set up. I have to spend the time to learn it, but I just have to set up the playbooks, the fact checking, and everything else. so that anyone can be able to do these. In fact, no one has to do it. That truly, I can just give you access to the Flask app that I've built, allow you to input a little bit of data, and off it goes. And not that it's doing automation for you, but it kicks off the request and says, Jordan would like to request these changes. Jordan is starting this project. He needs this many VLANs. He needs this many subnets. You define that criteria. I enter the variables, I enter the values needed, and then I kick off the automation. That's really what I'm going for. I love it. I love the idea of stitching all this together. And I'm doing it all right now on a VM on my work computer, which is over here to my right. And I'm doing it all with containers. So I'm doing a lot of firsts here. I got Docker running with a ton of containers. I'm writing a Flask app, and I'm dipping my toes in Ansible. And you know what? I'm loving it. I'm absolutely loving it. Although I really don't know what I'm doing, but I'm learning.
Thomas says, and Tony just described 2 months of full-time work to make all this happen. And he's not wrong. It's quite intense, what you just mentioned.
Sure. But once it's done, it's done.
It saved you 15 minutes of work. Like, you have to, this is the challenge in having this conversation, like real world. Like, we need advocates, and advocates are great, but the advocates often have a hard time. We have this conversation around IPv6 all the time. I'm an IPv6 advocate in the sense that I believe it absolutely is important. We should be moving to it. We should be putting effort towards it. But I also understand the real world, right? And when you start talking real world with automation and you bring up that example, it's a great example, but you just told us it took you 15 minutes. Let's double it. It takes you 30 minutes. How long until you putting the months of work into making that work? How many iterations of that lab environment do you need to deploy for it to be net positive on your time? And then how do you go to management and communicate that value? And this is the challenge.
I don't know. I like what Laz says. I just put it up on the screen. Where you get the real benefit is when you can push the work to a lower tier. That's the whole point. Is right now I have to manually go in and do it. And not because I'm some CCIE or anything. It's just because I'm most familiar with the network and I can more comfortably do it than the systems guys, who are working with those VMs or then the people who are, building whatever. They don't really care about subnets and VLANs, and they don't want to have to care about it. That's the thing.
I
so right now I do it.
It takes so 2 months of your time to do it. So you could be...
It takes 2 months of my time to be able to give it to somebody else.
Right. So I just, the question then is, and that's a very valid argument. And I'm just playing devil's advocate here because I get the fun of having these conversations and not with the engineers who buy all in and think that automation is the best and whatever, with the managers and the executives who are looking at it and saying, I'm not sure. And it's really hard to come up with a good argument for some of these use cases because of the amount of time it takes currently. And this is why I think orchestration systems will ultimately win, at least for the large majority of what we're talking about. Orchestration, when we think about orchestration, we think about it like an SD-WAN environment. You're not managing the SD-WAN devices. You're not managing the end devices, not directly. You're managing the controller. And by abstracting that automation, it gives you one target with a very constrained amount of things that you can do. And now automation becomes more plausible. With what you're talking about, it's not a constrained environment because you're talking about a VM environment with lots of flexibility, switches with lots of flexibility. They offer thousands of potential features, of which as soon as you're done writing that, Laz just brought this up, someone will come with a new use case that uses one of those features, and you end up going, okay, now I need to refactor my code, and you're back working on the same problem again. And so I think that there's diminishing returns on some of these things, that it's fair of the executive task.
But wait a second. I think that's only a problem if you're going with the assumption that automation is to fix your problem once and for all. It's not. It's there to enable you to modularize your problem and to add on as necessary.
This is the important part of the conversation is around error remediation. When you talk about that, like you're now getting something.
one of the big things that I'm an advocate for, that this automation effort is helping to drive, is standardization. Okay, you can't automate efficiently unless you have standardized. Okay, so this sort of pushes onto that. So like right now, I have 3 different gateway appliances for my 3 different sites. We're going to be changing that so that I can write one playbook that pushes out changes to them all as the exact changes as necessary. Switching is pretty basic for me as I'm dealing with basic trunks and access ports. There's nothing to it. So anything that I can automate in the field will be fine for now. I don't need to replace all of our field switches. But at least the gateways, I want to standardize them, and not just the appliances, but I also get to standardize my IP schema. I get to standardize my VLAN schema. I get to standardize every component that goes into the configuration. And there's real value in that. There's real efficiencies derived from that. That's one of the things that this automation is pushing us into that realm, and I'm really excited for it.
So again, counterpoint, modularization doesn't require automation and has always been a good design principle. So I agree that repeatability, we were at 4 months now.
Tom was just saying that the system I described was going to take 2 months to build. Yeah. And now we're talking about standardizing hardware. He's upping the stakes now to 4 months.
4 months, right.
And he's a developer, that guy. So, you know, maybe I should tuck tail and run. No, I'm excited. I'm excited.
And I'm not, and I'm definitely not trying to.
It won't take me 4 months.
I'm definitely not trying to pour cold water on automation, because I absolutely, wholeheartedly believe it's the future of what we're doing. I just think that there's a maturity curve, and that we're not the groundbreakers. There's been people who've broken the ground before. It keeps getting longer. Laz now says with a team of 4 people and a project manager. Right. It's not that we're talking about breaking ground. A lot of that's already been done. It's not inventing something new. Automation has been around for a long time, but we are in that. That's why I said I feel like we're in that infant or toddler stage, is because we're still really low on the maturity curve, and so it's really hard. I mean, we should be going through these efforts. 100% should be going through these efforts. It's just hard to communicate the value to management. It is. To be able to dedicate that time, because it is time consuming, because of the fact that we aren't standardized. At least most organizations are not standardized in the way they deploy things, because of the fact that we are using less than the most efficient tools. And so, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. I just think that it's going to be a crawl, walk, run process. What you described is awesome, but I don't think you're doing it 2 months from now, right? Like, I think that this is going to be something that's going to exist as you keep working towards.
Exactly. What I described is my big picture. That's my dream. And it's that target of why I'm studying this automation and why I'm going through it, because I think that is an awesome end goal. And I want to try and realize that as best I can.
I also think
another thing is I work for a small company. I've mentioned this already. I work for a small company. So we aren't going to realize a lot of the value and savings, okay? But it's because we do services for other large enterprises that I get to educate myself. I also get to educate my team. We also get to build and learn from our own experiences doing this. And I realize everyone isn't in this boat that has, leadership able to buy in and support this kind of thing, to put time and effort behind it. But I'm fortunate that I do, and my team does, and my company does. And this enables, so when we go on the customer site, we get to say, this is how we've done it. This is what works. Here's troubles that we've had, and to be able to advise, because ultimately, that is our company's role, and that is how we make money. So investing in ourselves is not a waste of money at all. So I realize not everyone has that ability. Not everyone's company is supportive in that way, but mine is. And so that's what got me really excited about automation.
This is a great.
All right, sorry. Chat's been firing up. I haven't been following.
Thomas is.
We got to get Tom on or something. He's firing off.
we have started talking about documentation, pre and post change validation, recertifying the environment. I think one of the other values, as you talk about automation and getting into it, and the value it provides you as somebody who consults, is we can start articulating the value of good design principles in just yet another way. Automation If you're not doing it now, it's coming. And what you really need to start preparing for is you need standardization and modularity. Because if you don't have standardization and modularity, your automation journey is going to be painful. So even if you're not doing automation today, what you should be doing is at every implementation point, every time you're talking about replacing something, every time you're talking about building a new building, every time you're talking about doing something which is going to change the structure of the network, you should be doing everything you can do to start standardizing as many things as you possibly can to get ready, because it is coming, and modularity and standardization is going to make that process a lot easier. It's going to allow you to realize a lot more value. And like, that's a conversation I can have. Like, I can easily have that. Like, when we're designing things now, you have to be thinking about automation. It has to be a part of your design guidelines or principles when you're talking about putting something in. We spent a lot more time on that than I think we were planning on.
Automation's a big subject, man.
It's a good chat.
And apparently it gets the crowd fired up.
Yeah, we've got people
Tom
chatting.
says, don't mind me, he's just trolling. That's okay, I take no offense. In fact, I take nothing but advice. So that's great.
I prefer the term peanut gallery. So it's good stuff.
Yeah. So that's
all,
what I've been
all the way
up
back to go if you are interested in starting automation. This book, what is it again? What's the name of the book?
Yep. That's Automate Your Network. I did drop a link earlier. Automate Your Network, John Capobianco.
Right.
It's green, so it affects with the chroma key and the green screen. Automate Your Network. It's on Amazon. I opted for the hard copy. I think the Kindle is like $10. It's pretty cheap. The hard copy is more than that, but I'm a tactile person, so I always opt for the book. And written very well.
You say it's approachable, and a great place to start. So if you're looking to start, it's worth it.
I didn't know where to begin. I really didn't know where to begin. And this, let's do it. Let's automate all the things.
Nick Russo has a lot on Pluralsight around automation. He's doing courses regularly around automation. So if you're just getting started, I know that's another great resource that a lot of people give a lot of credit to.
I just saw one of his courses on Twitter. Someone must have tweeted it, or I think it was Nick himself, that I didn't know he did. And actually, I want to dive into, as I just described, what my dream is for my CI/CD pipeline automation framework. But he has a whole course on, I think, Netbox and leveraging Netbox across your either Ansible or Python and stuff like that, and using that as your source of truth. And I think that's awesome, and I need to dive into that because that's really what I want to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Andre brought up NRE Labs. I'm curious, Andre, what do you mean? What are you mentioning on NRE Labs? NRE Labs is awesome. If you're not familiar with what NRE Labs are, it's something that Juniper put together, but it's not actually Juniper's project. And it is a place to go test some of this stuff. It uses Guacamole as a front end. If you're familiar with the Guacamole project for going in and building out lab environments, and they offer it for free with guided. And we haven't talked about it for a long time, but they do have a lot of courses around automation and some other things. It'd be another good place to start. In fact, I need to go there. I haven't been to NRE Labs in quite some time. But yeah, it was fantastic when it started, and it's not nrelabs.com. That one's for sale. nrelabs.io. Yeah, nrelabs.io. So yeah, definitely worth checking out.
I think Jair said, who was that again, creating content regarding Netbox? I believe it was Nick Russo. I saw a tweet from him. This was an old tweet of content he released on Pluralsight. So I think you can get that on Pluralsight if anyone wants to search it up. I'll try and do it also.
Guacamole is delicious. Yes, indeed, it is.
Guacamole is such a cool little project. I always thought about leveraging Guacamole as a way to get around like enterprise restrictions. So if you're on a lockdown computer in a lockdown network, but still allows out, I can go get a Let's Encrypt, certificate on an HTTPS server and make that just a Guacamole head end. and drop me into a desktop, a virtual desktop somewhere, then I can just use that to do whatever I want, to search any websites I want, anything that might be blocked by proxy policy or anything else. So I always thought about that, and one of those things that maybe I didn't ever have time to do.
Yeah, we use it quite a bit in our lab infrastructure to provide, because WWT, I say ours, WWT, my employer, we build pretty extensive labs for use of our customers and partners and whatever. And you go in and log in, and it's complete web interface right into pretty extensive environments, very similar to what NRE Labs is doing, but more product and solution focused. And it's a really solid product, or project, I should say. Guacamole works really, really well. All right. So we've chatted now for about an hour, and so I think that we've we want to do some news stories, some other stuff we want to talk about, but maybe we should break it up and do some trivia. Yeah. I have resurrected the VM. So Sweet. about 5 minutes before we went live, I went to go check my VM because, well, little more story. We did not have a stream last week, and we did not have a stream because both Tony and I were busy and overwhelmed with our schedule and just took the week off. And so what happened pretty much immediately after we had that conversation, Tony and I were back and forth, like, are we going to do this? And it's like, nah, we're going to just take the night off. We need the night off. It wasn't even 30 minutes after that conversation, I lost power at my house. Now, I live on a power grid that must be made out of porcelain or something. I don't know what it's made out of. And when I lose power, I don't lose power for like, oh, it was out for an hour or out for half hour or 2 hours. It was out for 24 hours. So it went out, or it wasn't quite, it was 21 hours. Not quite 24. And so like it didn't just go out. So like we couldn't have done the stream last week anyway. But then it was out for all of the next day. I was working out of the RV, actually. That was kind of fun. I fired up the generators. I had air conditioning. I had my whole wireless setup that I put in there that I talked about a few weeks ago. And I was just like, I'm working like I'm on the road. And so I was able to do my job, but about 5 minutes before the show started today, it was like, oh, I got to go check to make sure that the VM that runs like the trivia stuff and all that was up. And all my VMs were showing unknown on my host. And I'm like, oh no, like what's going on? So I actually just rebooted my host and they all came back. So crisis averted. But why don't we do some trivia? I think that'll be fun. All right,
also, so, Jair, if you're still in chat, I'm trying to search through Pluralsight for Nick Russo's content. I don't see a Netbox specific course, but I know he incorporated that into some other course material. I'm sifting through it, but I don't have the link yet. If you find it, send it to me over a chat or something. I'll drop it in for everybody else. All right, Kahoot game time.
All right, so we're gonna do trivia. Everyone's welcome to join. Just so everyone knows, we've since we started doing trivia, we kind of like, we brought it on and we're gonna like, hey, we'll bring somebody on the show and whatever. Last few weeks, it's kind of been hard to get people on the show just for timing and whatever. So we're just going to do this one round and we're just going to have fun with it. No prizes, no anything like that. It's just going to be for fun. But please join in and have fun.
But you get Network Collective bragging rights.
That's right. Bragging rights. You get to be king of Network Collective trivia. You get to be king of Network Trek. If you win tonight, you get to be king for several weeks. Because I mentioned earlier that I'm going to be going in for this procedure. So next week I'm definitely out. I'm having surgery, on Monday. So I'll be out definitely next week and possibly into the next week, depending on how long recovery takes. And so, Preston, I appreciate that. I've done a lot of work with VMware in my past life. I just haven't, it hasn't translated into my new roles in quite some time. So I'm a little rusty. I might reach out. I'll hit you up in Slack if I need any help. It's just a single ESXi box. It sits in my basement. Tony, you might be the only one playing. Apparently no one else wants to join.
Come on, people. Get in there. Give me a challenge.
All right. We have one more taker.
All right, Jair. Okay.
Preston is in. Laz, man, where are you? I'm calling you out.
Oh, also, I don't think we talked about it. We'll talk about it after trivia, but we'll talk about some of that news and some other stuff after trivia. But but I did reserve that Ford Lightning.
Did you really?
It's $100.
We have
It's
to talk about that.
Refundable $100. Yeah. I'm excited. I'm really excited. What I'm not excited about is the one I want is to see they give you a price range. So like the range is going to be MSRP from $39,000 to $93,000. I'm sure the one I want is on this side of the spectrum, right? Not the $39,000 one. So because I just bought my truck 2 years ago, so it has retained a lot of value. Obviously, because of COVID, it doesn't have a lot of miles on it. So I'm looking for a high trade-in value or to possibly sell it and walk away with some cash. But still, I don't think it's enough to be an even trade. I'm definitely going to have to come up with some extra cash. And it's going to be a lot of extra cash if we're looking towards that 90 mark. First of all, I'm not going to spend 90 grand on a truck that I drive back and forth to work.
Hold on.
But
you can use it to power your house though.
But for 90 grand, I can buy a lot of generators.
Well, but it's not a generator; it's battery.
I don't care.
You can't buy a lot of battery packs.
Care.
It's actually pretty efficient. Some people are actually talking about buying it just for that purpose because the cost per kilowatt hour is actually really efficient.
That is a marketing thing only. There's no one is buying the Ford Lightning is actually going to be able to power their house. First of all, in order for that to work, you have to have a transfer switch that takes you off the grid.
Of course.
Right? So you don't feed that power back into the electrical grid. There's so much to it.
Tony, people are doing this. This is with the whole solar install with the Powerwall from Tesla, which was super attractive for a lot of reasons. And people are installing very large power banks if they're doing solar or they're doing other things. This kind of like negates that and says, forget about a generator, forget about whatever. Yes, you need to have a transfer switch. Absolutely 100% true. That's cheap in the grand scheme of things. I just told you I lost power for a day. If I had a truck that would just run off of whatever and then also was backup power for my entire house, I could run air conditioning, I could run the whole house, and all I had to do is install a transfer switch, I'm in. Like, you know what I'm saying? I don't know at 90,000, right? But like, I understand what you're saying, but there's additional value in this. And if I could tow with this truck, which this is the big downside for me because I have the RV, the towing range hasn't really been revealed yet. I don't think. I saw some early reports, but the actual range of the truck is somewhere around 300 miles. But the towing range is going to be like
for the extended battery.
It's going to be like 100 miles. So like if I'm going to have to recharge this truck every 100 miles, it just doesn't work for towing for long distances.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Welcome, Dan. I saw you broke your lurking. Awesome. I'm glad you're here. Okay. We need some music. Let me
let's hit it. Yeah. And I think we got enough. We
got some people joining in. It's awesome. We left it up there long enough. We chatted long enough. That's what it was.
So 300 miles is with the extended battery. I don't know, 200 and some for the standard battery. I mean, for me, it'll work. Here's the thing. When I bought my truck was 2019. It's the first new vehicle I ever bought. I was very excited. I went to all the truck dealerships. And what I kept saying to myself, every truck dealership I went to was, why doesn't Tesla just make a truck? God, I would just buy it if they made one. And then like a month later, they came out with a truck. And I was like, that's not what I meant. That's not what I meant. I take it all back.
I had the same thing. I have so wanted an electric vehicle.
When it was last Thursday or Thursday before last, when I saw the F-150 reveal, I don't know, I was just on Twitter and, marketing took over and I saw the reveal. I was like, that's what I want. I want a truck that looks like a regular truck.
Yeah.
I want it to have cool electronics. I want it to have cool gadgets and features. That's what I'm into. I like that techie crap. And, I really don't care if it's battery or not. I like that it is. And I just want to try it, Right. And if I don't like it after this, and if the world goes back to, fossil fuels for cars, then my next vehicle will be a gasoline car. I don't care.
Right.
But I want to try it. Let me get into it. I'm excited for it.
Yeah. No, I would be all in if I didn't have the towing requirement. Preston here says 300 miles while it's towing. There's no way it's 300 miles while it's towing 10,000 pounds. It's not a chance. And then someone else says
1,000 pounds. 1,000 pounds.
Yep.
In the bed.
1,000 pounds in the bed, which is just capacity. That's not towing.
Yeah.
That's payload.
Yeah.
And so that's so yeah. But it is a super. If I wasn't towing something large, I would definitely be in, because I had the same reaction when Tesla said they were doing a truck. I was so interested. I even was in LA when they revealed it. So I was 3 blocks away, and I was staying, and I was out there for a project at a customer in LA, and I was considering.
I think I remember you saying this story.
Staying because I was so excited. Tesla's doing a truck. I'm like, I'm in $1,000 reserve. I was ready to put it on it. Like I was ready to go. Yep. And then they revealed it, and I'm like, nope. All ounce of excitement went out the window. I don't need to be driving a Mad Max vehicle. Just doesn't interest me. I'm sure there's an audience for it. I don't know who that audience is. More power to them. All right, let's get some music started. Let's get this trivia going. We can talk trucks more in a little bit. There we go. Okay, we got people in. All right, are we ready to go? I guess we're ready to go. Let's do it.
I forgot. No sun, no work. Okay. I don't know. I don't even know what good numbers would be. I know nothing about this stuff. That's what I mean. Like, I'm into the Ford Lightning, but I know nothing about electric vehicles. I don't even care. My
portable solar panel with my RV rig that I bought is 200 watts.
Wow.
There you go.
Wow. Kahoot gives you such things. Keep trying and turn things around. And it says you're on the podium. How am I on the podium? Everyone had 0.
You were the first one to sign in.
Megalophobia is the fear of. All right, I have a guess on this one. Don't know if it's right.
Nice.
I was wrong. See that blue? That one in the blue column? That's me.
The one person who didn't answer correctly? So you're not on the podium anymore then?
Nope.
Auto Kahoot robots. Nice. Speaking of Tesla.
Wakanda. Oh, that's good.
I ran out of reasonable answers. So then you just go for the absurd. Nice.
All right. I'm not even on there. Okay. I did get one right.
It's the way it should be.
Well, how about I steal that one?
So you just answered it quickly so you could be better than everybody else? You're playing the lag. Yeah, you're cheating.
I know.
Am I hurting your ego?
Nope. My ego is strong.
There we go. Nicely done.
Wow. I'm not up there. No problem. Dan's on fire.
Yeah. It's relevant for today's conversation.
Automatonophobia, right? Automatonophobia. Fear of network automation. Oh, that's so good. You snuck that in there. I love it.
Look at that.
Whoa! I got that one right. I was just thinking, what's an automaton? Right?
Well done. Peanut Gallery with 4 in a row.
Ooh. Hey, do you remember that joke, like crank yankers? They used to like go in the movie theater with that big giant phone. They used to go, hello, hello. Yeah. What year was it?
I wouldn't get this one right. I have no idea. I don't pay attention to this stuff.
Oh. I think I was married that year.
Ah.
I think. Wow. 5 answers in a row, Peanut Gallery. Who is that? Is that Preston or is that Laz?
I think it's Laz.
I'm going to guess. It doesn't matter how much time I leave. Funny story is Monopoly is so serious in my family. When my stepmom was pregnant and she was giving birth, when she was getting ready to give birth to my sister, they were in the middle of a Monopoly board and they were like, wait. Take a picture of the board before we go to make sure no one changes any pieces or moves any money around. They had like a Polaroid camera like that. Yeah. And you left it just list. Like that. Huh?
All right, 8 of 10.
I don't know. Is reserved? I never liked them reserve VLANs.
They take good, valid VLANs. They don't let you use them.
I'm going to guess on this one. Like internal VLANs.
Nicely done.
Weird. That is, why is that?
It's internal
Why
functions.
Why is that, Jordan?
Yeah, the internal functions. There's a number of reasons.
Okay.
9 of 10.
It kills me sometimes to like wait for the countdown. I really do. I sit here and I wait the countdown because I get to see our stream before it gets published to YouTube. Yep. So I sit here and I just wait till it counts down to 1. Then I throw my answer in the hat so I don't.
Then you end up in the top 3 anyway.
that only happened the once, and I don't know what was up. I think it was a conspiracy to get me into Final Jeopardy for that one. Wait, this is question 9 of 10. We got to take this serious.
Yeah, we got one more.
One more.
One more.
Peanut Gallery. Come on.
Auto Kahoot Robot, whoever that is. They both are in the running there. Last one.
Oh, yeah, I definitely don't do that. This is going to pull from memory. It's going to pull from memory. I think this is it. Pepperidge Farm remembers.
That's right.
Really? A net?
Yeah, yep.
I thought the net was just one of those values. Like, I forget how they're broken up. Is it the middle portion? I don't know how they're broken up.
So the NSAP is something specific. It's not the address of each element, and I think that's maybe the wording on that's a little bad. Anytime when there's that many people who get the question wrong, it could be me. So Auto Kahoot Robot did it though. And he did it on that last question.
8 out of 10. And also Peanut Gallery got 8 out of 10. Those are pretty good.
Very nicely done.
That was tight scores, less than 100 points.
Yeah.
Between them.
Very
wow.
close.
Who was Auto Kahoot Robot? If anyone's watching the stream, you want to give yourself a shout out in YouTube chat?
Yeah, I don't know, but we're going to. Whoa, no.
Yeah.
Pause. That's my buttons are on. Oh, I'm hitting the wrong button. No wonder it's going to the next song. Yeah, so well done. All right.
Wow. That is super cool.
So the lightning.
All right, I'm gonna save that. I'm gonna save that one for research. So I'm gonna save that ISIS question.
Sounds
for research.
good. You can correct me if I'm wrong. All right. So there we go. Auto Kahoot Robot, whoever that was. Congratulations.
Hey, give yourself a shout out. Are you on Twitter? Let me see. No. Yeah, and you know what's just happening? I just looked over at Twitter. I was going through to do Naked Hardware pre-show, and when I was clicking on the Naked Hardware from 2 weeks ago that we had posted, it hid a response, and it said that this is like offensive content, and I had to click show.
Seriously?
Yeah, and I recorded a video of me doing that, scrolling down, it says offensive content. I click show, and then you get to see what it is. So if anyone wants to go on my Twitter feed, you can see that. Warning, offensive content. Yeah, I don't know. It says including show additional replies, including those that may contain offensive content.
Thomas was Auto Kahoot Robot, and some of those questions were his. I pulled some of the remaining questions from his list that he gave me. So we're going to say, in all fairness, Laz took that one, assuming that Laz was the Peanut Gallery, which I believe that he was. So,
yeah, within 100 points, and Tom was answering his own questions. Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, so Tom says he willingly relegates himself to second place. Yeah, I was, so, back to the truck thing, man. I was super interested in that. There's a lot of very valid reasons why that's an interesting thing, especially with a trailer, like with an RV, because there's a lot of times you need generator or electric. So having that built into your truck would be awesome. Towing capacity is just not there yet. But if I wasn't towing, I would be right there with you, Tony. I'd be all in on that. That'd be awesome. I'm growing on the truck thing though, dude. Like I know that towing, especially a big rig like what you have. First of all, towing regularly with that truck probably isn't a good idea. Occasionally is fine, moving something, going from A to B. Loads,
okay. It is what it is. But a big rig like yours, no. But there are a lot of like towing features on that. Like there's an automatic scale, right? So you get to know how heavy your load is, how heavy the tongue is, right? Weight. Also there's like 2 cameras, and they must be positioned in the exterior side mirrors, I think, that give you like a camera view on your center console of like the downside of your trailer. So like a view from as wide a position as you can get down the edge of your trailer, which is super cool. Then there's a bunch of cameras also that I think are built in for pulling in, making sure you're aligned with the tongue of the trailer, a view from above. Like there's all kinds of stuff that just make it a lot easier. But yeah, towing a big rig like yours doesn't make sense. No. I don't think the energy efficiency is there.
Yeah, it'll be a long time until EV gets there. And when it does, I'll be super interested. But in the meantime, I'm getting my when towing 8 miles to the gallon.
So can someone educate me? Look, I'm not looking for a full, electrical engineering explanation, but can someone educate me? Are we going to be able to, down the road soon, be able to just replace our batteries with more efficient batteries to get better range out of them?
A battery tech is being developed. And it's advancing rapidly now because there's a lot of purposes for it, and especially like the high capacity batteries around EVs. Like we said, the wall. There's other things where batteries are being developed. But But unless there's some like revolutionary change in the way that batteries are developed, it's going to be incremental gains, just like in computers, just like other things. We're going to see incremental gains over time. And so it'll be interesting to see if there's any dramatic changes now that there's a lot of effort going into long range batteries, high capacity batteries. There's some laws of physics that come into play, though. Of course, with the more energy that you store, there's risks involved with it, just like there is in the EVs currently, right? There's a lot of power that's there. And then there's also materials. Some of the materials are hard to get. And so battery materials matter a lot. But when you start talking about large scale batteries, you start talking about supply issues. There's only so much lithium that's available. There's only so much, other components that aren't common for other things. So I don't know. I don't know that like if you were to buy an EV today, like by the time that it's done or its batteries are done, could you replace it with much more high efficiency batteries and get more range? I don't know. For the same weight, probably not likely. Thomas says it's all chemistry. The limit is LiPo right now. For. Yeah. Right. And so here, Laz, so there are some graphene hybrids that are out now that have 20 to 40% increase in charge. So they scale up. And again, that's that incremental change, right, that happens as technology starts evolving, as people start paying more attention to it. I know that there's a lot of advancement, but I'll tell you what, like LiPo, and not just LiPo, but LiFePo, if you get into the lithium iron phosphate, they're really expensive. Like the amount you pay for the actual battery, there's also an economic component to it that gets a little bit challenging. That's one of those things when looking at RVing, and also my other hobby with, astrophotography, which has been a bust recently because I've not been able to get the weather to line up with my schedule at all, with the exception of this last Monday. I finally got the scope out. But having a battery to run that as well, like it'd be awesome to go lithium, but the costs are just relatively expensive to get a similar capacity to what you get out of lead acid, which you can't obviously run lead acid for an EV. So Preston says we apparently have lots of lithium, but we're going to have a lot of problems with cobalt, which that's right. Cobalt is the one that's limited. Lithium has less constraints. I knew it was one of them, but you're right. I think it's cobalt that's the one that's limited.
I wanted to bring us around to talking about when we were on live stream 2 weeks ago. There was a big news story at the time. You guys might remember it. Colonial Pipeline. There was a big news story at the time.
If you don't remember it, just go into your email right now and look for the ambulance chaser advertisers that now want to sell you products who are using Colonial Pipeline as an example. They'll tell you all about it.
I wanted to bring up Colonial Pipeline, and I don't want to rehash it, but it was on the last show. We were talking about ransomware. We were talking about how this affects other industry. You were telling a story about how you thought this related to a previous customer you worked very closely with. It sounded so familiar.
Incredibly.
Thank goodness it was a different customer, but yeah. And you had made a comment many times, and you had fortified this statement with, sometimes it's just easier to pay. It's just easier to pay than it is to not pay and suffer the whatever the public does to you, whatever it takes to restore, whatever it takes to pull backups, whatever that whole IT circulation is going to be within your organization to get your assets back online. Sometimes it's just easier to pay. And I think you were phrasing it as simply as like, it just comes down to money.
It's economics.
It doesn't come down to what's right and what's wrong in the world. It just comes down to money. And not a day after,
I think it was a couple hours,
our live stream, news had broke that Colonial Pipeline had paid. And it was one of those things that it was just going to cost more than the $5 million to do the restore effort. And it was just easier and quicker to pay. But a follow-up news story, and I haven't seen much more of this, was they were finding that the decryption tool was actually so slow that they ended up just restoring from backups anyways.
Yep. And the other thing is, if you pay, can you really trust that those systems are clean? Like, that's the challenge in paying. But they did pay. And the executives owned up to the fact that they paid. And I'm not surprised. You're a major infrastructure player, and you saw the panic that happened. People were out buying gas like crazy. Everyone was hoarding. Like, everyone was really, really, really worried. If that outage had continued on for another couple of weeks, we would have seen justification for that. There would have been. We already going into this, a bit of inside, right? But like, already going into this summer, we're facing challenges with delivery of gasoline, not through pipelines, actually through truck drivers. But then you add the fact that a pipeline goes out on top of it, and it's just like, forget it. Like, we are just getting gasoline where it needs to go was going to be a major challenge. And they did, I think, probably what was, as much as it sits as wrong in me and on every level, right? To pay these people, they probably did what was best for them, what was best for the country, right? To get that infrastructure back on. What would have been better is to not have the problem at all, or to have systems that were isolated, so you didn't have east-west traffic, so that you couldn't hop from one to the other and have this thing encrypting, key systems. But we're past that. And once we're past that, what's the best thing to do? And I don't know that the answer to this is clear. And when we talk about security, I think I even brought this up at that show, like Greg Farrow, Packet Pushers, has a thing that he talks about all the time, and I have a really hard time arguing against it. And that is based off of security breaches and based off of what the actual real world consequence is for security breaches. It's cheaper just to pay for an insurance and pay whatever penalty you have than it is to build real security. And that is a sad state of affairs. But I think from a business logic and taking all of the moral components out of it completely, I'm not speaking morally, I'm just speaking from a pure economic standpoint. If you're comparing dollars and cents to the impact to your business, is it better to have a security system in place, a robust security system that stops most of these things? Or is it better to pay for an insurance and just deal with the consequences when they come and walk away from it?
You're using the word better as the adjective to describe that. And I think you mean cheaper, right? It's like because there's one of those that is better than the other, but there's one of those that is cheaper than the other.
Better is relative to what? Better than what? So to me, when we're talking about better, there's a couple
we're talking about pure economics.
Well, cheaper, but I think one of the challenges too is it's not just that it's cheaper. It's also that the downside isn't all that big. Target had a huge breach from their point of sale systems. Does Target have any problem retaining those customers? No, not at all. Right? Think about all the major breaches we've had. Have any of those stores gone out of business because of a breach? Not one of them. Have any of them, like, the next earnings cycle all of a sudden, like, had a 50% drop in share price and never recovered? No, it's never happened, right? And so it's not just the economics. How much does it cost, like pure ROI? There's also what's the implications to the business? So why spend all that money? And I think it's a completely fair question. Why spend all that money, right? Now, you go to the morals and ethics side of it, and it says the bad guys shouldn't win, good guys, should protect their stuff. We shouldn't have to need it to begin with, right? If we want to talk about perfect world, but of course we don't live in that perfect world. We have to secure our environments, so you should do it. But I have a hard time finding a fault in the argument that it's cheaper just to pay the consequences than it is to build a robust security system. You work in security all the time. And everyone who's in networking has to touch security at least tangentially. You can't tell me it's not complicated. It's incredibly complicated, and it's incredibly expensive to do right. It is really, really expensive to do right. And for every dollar that an attacker spends, you have to spend thousands to be able to mitigate it, right? And you have to be right every single time. It's the problem, right, like, they only have to be right once. They have to find one vulnerability amongst thousands or millions of options. And you have to protect millions of them, and you get it wrong once, and it doesn't matter that you spent all that money at all. It was all a wasted effort. And it's just such a sad state of affairs.
Well, you know what, though? But you know what? I mean, it's a pretty broad statement, and I don't want to dig too deep into it, but but it does matter. And even when it comes down to, like I see Laz says, that works until your premiums skyrocket. But that you have to show what's called like a reasonable effort to protect your data for insurance companies to be able to back you for ransomware, for you're getting insured in case someone comes into your network. You have to be able to show reasonable protections. And that's just like if I try to draw an analogy, that would be like me insuring my home, but like removing all the locks off the doors. The insurance company is going to be like, what the hell? You didn't have locks on? We're not paying for this crap. Someone broke in? They didn't even break in. They just walked in. It was an open door. The same is being said and the same is being pushed from the insurance companies onto these companies and their cybersecurity. And they're saying like, you had a firewall that said, allow any from the outside. No, this was not reasonable protections. I don't care if it cost you $1 million, you missed the reasonable protection part. Now, of course, that's a relative statement in itself, right? And I'm painting with a broad brush too. I'm painting all the insurance companies together. But still, you have to show this effort in order for insurance to be able to come back you. And they're starting to do some pretty big compliance checks because they're footing the bills for millions and millions and millions of dollars of claims.
But think about this.
This is a
this
rampant
company
problem.
Right. Think about this company, though. I don't know how big they are. I have a idea because of my similar environment that I've worked in. But think about any decently large sized company, whatever it is, and ransomwares. We're talking about for big companies, and when the people who are doing it know who they've attacked, like they're coming in and they're demanding a few $1 million. You don't even need insurance at that point. Like the cost of the gear to protect it is less than the ransom, right? Over the same amount of time. Now, of course, if you leave yourself wide open, you'll constantly be fighting it. So it can't be nothing, right? Like it's not like you can reduce your security spend to zero, but like those minimum requirements, firewall at the edge, some meaningful logging. I'm not sure what reasonable protections actually means.
I don't either. I don't either. And I'm sure it differs per region, per industry, per company, per insurance provider. I'm sure there's too many variables to lump them into one category.
Right. But if you did some minimal spend, I bet you could hit that. But even if you couldn't qualify for the insurance. Okay. So they pay this $5 million ransom. They move on. That was $5 million. What's that? 5 years of security spend? So long as they don't get, attacked in the next 5 years? Nah. I don't know. I don't think it's as clear cut as what people make it seem. Like there's a big push in the security industry about securing everything. We talk about segmentation. We talk about zero trust. We talk about a lot of really complex technologies. So we talk about them in such a way that they impact the usability of the network. Every security feature that goes into place impacts the usability of the network. And we're getting to the point where we're getting really intricately involved with the network when it comes to security. And so the impact potential is very large when it comes to the usability components. Obviously, we're working to not impact usability as much as possible. But when you talk about zero trust, that's a huge paradigm shift when you talk about the way you access your apps, what you can and can't do, how you design things, and what's reachable from an east-west perspective. And so I think that, that's great, but you talk about a Fortune 500 company, how much are they going to spend on a zero trust networking initiative? Just that one security feature. We're not talking about CASB. We're not talking about remote access VPN. We're not talking about, the whole laundry list of the other security features, right? I could pull up a list, right, and just start rattling them off, right? That's just one. And that one would probably cover what a ransomware attack would cost for that company, for the whole thing.
You're again, it's
hard to argue. And again, I'm not saying it's what we should do, but somehow we have to change the dynamic. There needs to be some negative consequence, but it's hard to do that because a lot of these companies aren't doing it intentionally.
I'm actually just thinking of this now. It's like that saying that people have is like, you don't have to be faster than the bear. You have to be faster than the slowest person.
That's correct.
Right. And I think a lot of companies are sort of taking that stance towards cybersecurity, which is I don't need to invest every dollar I have and have the best cybersecurity on the planet. I just have to be better I just have to be better than the next low hanging fruit.
Until the attack is
just
targeted.
taking yourself. First of all, no amount of money will ever cover a targeted attack. That's a statement. You can put that on my gravestone. No amount of money will protect you from a targeted attack. It's about making yourself. It's about taking yourself out from being low hanging fruit.
Right.
Right. And that's the point. If you just make it a little bit more difficult than the low-hanging fruit, then you're out of the main target range. The main target range is going after that low-hanging fruit. Now, if someone targets you, there's nothing you can do.
I don't know. It depends on the sophistication of the person that's attacking you.
You know what you can do at that point? You can do the part of cybersecurity that almost everyone misses. Prepare. There's a lot of reactionary playbooks.
Right.
But prepare. Right? You have to actually prepare for it. You have to plan for it. You have to be ready for it. Not just, oh, it happened and now let's react. Let's be ready for it.
Right.
Let's get everyone ready. Let's make sure everything is being watched. So
sorry.
Yeah,
I didn't mean to drag it down that hole again. But no, they paid.
The economics argument. I think you're spot on. There is a moral stance there that you have to take. It's a balancing act. It's a balancing act. And there's no silver bullet to security. It's not a one size fits all. You do what you can with what you have. Everyone can do a little bit better. Everyone can do a lot better, maybe. But it's not an easy problem to solve, and no two problems are solved the same way. So I don't know. I'm in the space. I'm trying to solve problems all day. I'm trying to solve engineering problems. So disaster recovery plan. Yeah. Plan is that last step, right? It's plan, disaster recovery.
Oh man, I can make a whole new career of being a DRWI consultant, and that's disaster recovery winging it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I just wanted to cover that because I had mentioned before the show that I think you had called it. And it was on that show that you were like, look, it's going to be economics on this one. It's going to be economics. And within a day or less, economics won over moral.
What the right thing to do was. Well, I mean, it's hard to say that it's not the right thing to do.
Right. It is hard to say, right? Because you saw what that did to people. It drove at least everyone in my area into a frenzy, and it was chaotic and stupid. So regular enterprise DR, yeah.
So regular, that's what I'm saying, Laz. I can make some money doing this. Regular enterprise
this week
DR.
also, actually, it was just today. Today, I think there have
Several
been three acquisition announcements today that might affect some of us. So the three on my list are A Cloud Guru, getting acquired by Pluralsight, right? So there's a training vendor being brought under the larger umbrella.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know who
owns Pluralsight.
I don't know who owns Pluralsight either. I will say this. There were some people who had some concerns about this one. I don't know how big of a deal this one's going to be. I don't know. I'm not saying it's not going to be a big deal, but I think that A Cloud Guru, if you're not familiar, incredibly great site, lots of training resources around cloud, just everything cloud. But for our field, cloud networking and getting a feel for how to connect to and between and within the clouds, it's fantastic. They've got great content, and it's been really popular. It's been like the go-to place. Anytime it says like I need to learn how to do cloud, fill in the blank. A Cloud Guru is definitely on the list of places you should go. And the subscription to A Cloud Guru isn't that bad. I don't know what it is. I forget what it is, but it's not unreasonable to go and buy like a year-long subscription or a whatever. And so a lot of people are, I guess, are concerned with the cost. So you get gobbled up by a bigger firm. They're paying a significant amount of money for them. And now
I didn't see what the acquisition was.
There was too many. I don't know what the hell the numbers were. I don't have them written down. They got to get that money back, right? Like when anytime an acquisition like this, anytime there's an acquisition like this, it looks like private equity is who's behind Pluralsight. is what we're seeing in chat here, which that's what I had heard as well. I just hadn't verified it. So they're going to want their money, right, at the end of the day. And so people are concerned about overall cost, but Pluralsight really isn't like prohibitively expensive either. And so I don't know that it's going to be, it'll be interesting to see how they do it. Is this content going to be absorbed into Pluralsight? Is it going to be one subscription? Are they going to keep a Cloud Guru separate and doing its own thing for a while? If they do that, I really don't think you're going to see a change in the subscription price all that much. But I could be wrong. Maybe everyone else is right, or those who are concerned are right. But we'll see. But yeah, it's just a consolidation of training. I think the big deal here is that for a while, for the past few years, we've actually had a lot of people who are putting content out there, some who are doing it professionally, some who are doing it, I'll call it amateur because they're not making money from it, not because they're amateur in their content quality, but because they're just putting it out there for community contribution. And it's been pretty widespread. I think what we're seeing is some consolidation in that space as companies continue to get bought and making bigger entities, which is what makes sense in any market. If you're the big fish, to continue to add to your portfolio of things that you do, if you have the money and resources to make that happen. It's natural, right? From a business perspective, I think for us, we look at it and go, here's this great resource. What's going to happen with it? And that's where the concern comes. And it's understandable.
Yeah. So I'm excited just to have more content on Pluralsight. You know, I see this as a benefit. I'm not at all beat up on it. I wasn't a member of a Cloud Guru, but now those resources will be available under probably under the year access plan. So we'll see.
I don't know if they will or if they won't. I mean, we'll see. There weren't any details, or at least I didn't read any details about how they were integrating the two, or if they were going to be integrated. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll just have to wait till that shakes out. The next one for acquisition, Stack Exchange. This one's pretty huge. Stack Exchange acquired by tech giant Prosus for $1.8 billion.
Yeah, so here's the thing. Tech giant? So that's every conversation says. I saw on this today was like, who is Prosus? And then people went investigating.
I was just going to say, I don't know who Prosus is, but also I have another acquisition that we'll do after we discuss this one. And that headline also reads, acquired by tech giant, fill in the blank. That seems to be the headline to read.
Is that just the default?
Yeah, I think so.
So yeah, I don't know. I don't know. So yeah, what were the company's process? Someone else went and looked in. Oh, well,
it said that they had just sold their shares of Tencent. Is that right? Deal is Prosus's biggest investment in online learning and comes weeks after it sold a chunk from its massive Tencent holding. Was the headline.
So Prosus is Prosus?
Prosus, yeah. Prosus signaled an appetite for deal making when it sold a small portion of its equity stake in Tencent in April for $14 billion. Wow.
Yeah, I mean,
the Stack Overflow deal ranks among Prosus's biggest acquisitions.
If this is the same company, like Udemy is in their portfolio.
Yeah, it says Udemy, Code Academy, Skillsoft.
Skillsoft is in there. Yeah, absolutely. And I see Code Academy in the list here. Auto Trader, which is an interesting. there's quite a bit of whatever. It seems like they just like collecting popular web properties.
You know, I don't even know how that business model works. Like, I don't understand investing, or like how I don't understand how not producing a product makes money. You just like buy portions of companies and you become richer, and then you sell portions of companies and you make money, and then you buy portions of companies. Like, I don't know, like there's no product. You know, at least when I'm working, I can give you a product. I've made something. There's a product to give. I don't understand, like, there's no product to give. Seems like you're just moving money from one account to another and getting richer somehow. I'm financially stupid. I don't know how any of it works.
It's investments, right? So like if you have money, you can pour it into the company. If they continue to grow, you get a portion of the growth, right? It's just like buying a stock. It's just doing it on a mass scale. You just buy the company, right? I will buy all of the stock, or if there's no stock, I'll buy the company. And then you have 100% controlling interest. And so, I mean, it makes sense because your product is what the company produces, right? So at the end of the day, you have given funds to this, in this case, this website, which everybody in technology uses. I saw somewhere though in one of the stories it said it's one of the most copy and pasted sites on the internet. 100% true. Like copy and pasted sites on the internet. People are using it as reference, especially around programming and those other things. And then, you know, like the other thing here is, to your point about like, how do you generate value? All of the value of Stack Exchange was not generated by Stack Exchange. They built the community, and everybody came and had conversations and talked about it. They built a platform. Everyone came and had these conversations, and it became the go-to place. And when it became the go-to place, and then when you talk about like, wow, like this website, which essentially is a forum, right? Like at the end of the day, that's really what they do, is worth $1.5 billion. Like that's crazy to me. But if the business is there, the business is there.
But how does Stack Exchange make money? Is it just ads?
I'm sure.
Ads and marketing? That's it? So are they making $1.8 billion worth of ads and marketing?
So it's been a while since I don't know what the rule of thumb is now, but typically it's what three times yearly revenue is typically what your valuation is going to be, or what it is. And so like they're not making 1.4 billion a year, but they're obviously making, you know, millions of dollars every year.
600 million.
Yeah.
If that's right. So, if your justification is right, that's 600 million a year in ads. Are you kidding me? We got to run ads during the show. We're missing revenue.
we've gone down that path. Unfortunately, when you're in a niche and you don't go to the broader audiences, we could dumb the show down a lot and appeal to a much broader audience. And we could go and we could do the YouTube, you know, poses with with the YouTube pose, and like, you know, learn this now, right? Like we could do that, and it's possible even in the networking space to, well, I mean, it's been proven up over 1 million followers. It's impressive.
It's true.
Right. But you can't do it at the depth that we talk about. At least I don't think so. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe somebody will prove me wrong, but it's just not there. So we get to play with the table scraps, and then places like Stack Overflow. And places like Stack Overflow get to be making millions, possibly $3-digit million.
Stack Exchange.
Stack Exchange, not Stack Overflow. Stack Exchange.
You know what is my favorite exchange? Experts Exchange.
Experts Exchange? Yeah. So that was a really weird one. That was one where, like, when you went to Experts Exchange, they tried to obfuscate the answers.
Sorry, I have to always laugh when you say it.
Why?
Let's type it out.
Oh,
there you go. You figure it out.
Yeah, no, I've got Preston. Yes,
Preston, you are always more than table scraps. You are table stakes.
I was not calling our audience table scraps. I was talking our statistics table scraps. Audience, no one's table scraps. Now I feel bad. That's not what I meant, Preston.
All right, let me jump into the next acquisition. Let me jump into the next one. The next one is FireEye. Just announced this afternoon, cybersecurity giant FireEye has agreed to sell its products business to a consortium led by private equity firm Symphony Technology Group, again for $1.2 billion. This is a huge numbers. First of all, FireEye is a big company with a number of great products. So I don't see that. They're selling products. They have a lot of they're in government, they're in military. They have a lot of customers that aren't going anywhere.
I wouldn't call it.
They're not just putting ads on their website.
Right. 1.2 billion is really not a big number anymore. It's a big number for a website. What's interesting here is
they're actually dividing the company, right? So Symphony Technology isn't actually buying FireEye. They're actually splitting the company. So they're buying the products part of FireEye.
Right. And the services are staying with the current organization.
That allows Kevin Mandiant and the Mandiant team and everyone else that does a threat intelligence and everything and digital forensics, incident response teams, all that services work. It allows them to branch out and then find new partners that FireEye couldn't before partner with. So I think it's an interesting strategy. I think it's lining a couple of guys' pockets with a ton of money, and I think it's actually going to be a good opportunity for us in the field, for us who are recipients of both their products, their blogs, their services, and their tools. So I think this is good on both ends, and I'm interested to see how this shakes out. Now, they said the sale won't go through till later this year. So we really won't see anything different until maybe next year. But I'm interested to see how that first new wave of FireEye products is going to be pushed out, and how sales is going to work, and support, and how that's going to work. It's going to be interesting.
We'll see. Later this year probably means they need regulatory approval. That's often what needs to happen, is they come to an agreement and then all needs to clear. It takes a little bit of time. Most acquisitions are that way. So yeah.
I wanted to go over two more things very quickly. One of them, in fact, is Quick. Quick got RFC'd last week. So officially it got RFC'd, and that's awesome.
Well,
the working group put their stamp on it.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
The working group had put their stamp on it. And that is a topic we've been looking to produce a show on for some time. And our schedules and other people's schedules haven't meshed up quite right. But now seems the time to maybe pursue that.
Yeah.
Quick is very interesting. I've tried to follow it as best I can without inside knowledge. It's very interesting in that it's changing the way I understand how network connections work. You guys all know I like to look down at the wire, and it's really changing the dynamic around that. Things like flow control, error recovery, congestion mechanisms, encryption. It's moving all that around for us. So it's UDP based. It's HTTP 3. There's TLS baked in. There's a lot going on there. It's not multi-threaded. What's the word I'm looking for? Multiplexed. You can have multiple conversations in one payload.
Right. Your setup only has to happen once, and you can have multiple conversations within that setup. So unlike TCP, where every single flow requires, your three-way handshake, this you set up basically one continuous flow, and you have multiple conversations with multiple. At least that's the way I understand it.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. And first of all, Google's pushed it out for a long time. They're one of the big pioneers. Cloudflare has Quick turned on. I think Facebook does as well. So there's a couple of big ones. So probably in your network, if you're monitoring, is seeing a decent amount of Quick going through there, going to the commercial and personal sites. It's interesting, and I can't wait to see what other applications are going to leverage Quick, or what other applications Quick will enhance.
Right.
Right now, most applications are leveraging TCP, right? This is the de facto standard as it stands right now. How many applications are going to dip their toe in the water and say, let's try and run this over Quick, and actually realize some efficiencies there and go, you know what? Out the door with TCP, let's go with UDP. And so I think maybe we could try and get Chris Greer on to talk about that. I think that would be
he's been
a good
doing
matchup.
quite a bit of work there.
I know Chris Greer has just released at least a primer video on YouTube, about 10 minutes long, on Quick, and just get you up to speed real quick.
Cool.
Quickly. Quick. Yeah.
Yeah.
And lastly,
I think it's unfortunately named because, well, it depends on how long it's around. If Quick becomes the new TCP, or becomes a competitive to TCP and it's around for as long as TCP has, it's all well and fine. But I feel like this is like naming something temp in a network. Sure, naming it Quick is
why do you think that?
It's all nice and fun for now because you've come up with great ways to enhance.
You mean because the next thing has to be labeled like
quicker,
super fast?
Right.
Quickest,
faster than quick.
Quick assist.
Right. You have to keep.
Wait a second. We know Quick was pioneered by Google, and Google, I think, originally released Speedy, right? SPDY, as a protocol before Quick. So while I don't know, is this the play on words, right? First it was Speedy, now it's Quick.
I'm telling you.
Next it will be Lightspeed.
anytime you name something
Ludicrous
like it's iterative,
speed.
yeah, like the next protocol is going to need to be ludicrous, and then what comes after ludicrous, right? I don't know. So
They've gone plaid.
plaid. That's the one that comes next. You're right. What comes after plaid?
No one knows. No one's ever been that fast and come back alive.
Nice. Nice.
So the last piece I wanted to touch on was I'm working on a demo. Preston Roberts got it. Thank you. Plaid 2 comes after plaid.
Yeah, that's temp 2. Yeah, that's exactly what starts to happen. As soon as the temp becomes permanent, and then you need to put the next one in, or you name something new. Here was our file server, so it's FS, right? And then all of a sudden now we need a new file server, so it's new FS, and then it's like really new FS, and then it's like really new FS. Yeah, it just gets to the point. Yeah.
You know, the last thing I wanted to say was I'm running my gateway here at home. I'm on a completely open source project that I'm really excited about. So one that has been up and down Network Collective for a very long time, but I'm an advocate of, and finally I have it running as my gateway, as my perimeter, and which is Vios. I really love Vios, and one of the awesome things about this book is leveraging Ansible. It's teaching me Ansible. Ansible plays really well with Vios, and there's a lot of Ansible modules for it. There's an Ansible guide that kind of walks you through level 1. So that's very cool. And I'm looking because Vios just offered in one of their rolling releases the ability to host containers on the Vios operating system, which is just a Linux under the hood, a stripped down Linux. So that's very cool. So I'm looking to run a couple of containers on my gateway edge. And I think that's going to be a lot of fun. So if anyone has any cool ideas, cool things to do, I want to try them. Also, it's giving me an opportunity to figure out the tooling so that I can automate these changes, and actually live them and test them here at home. So I'm pretty excited about that. For a long time, I had an off-the-shelf gateway, and so finally I have a home-built box, and I'm running Vios on it, and it's running well. Now, one of the things I have to troubleshoot is I was running iPerf. You can run iPerf from Vios as a client or as a server. So I'm running iPerf 3 as a client out to a VPS that I host. That's on a 1 gigabit port. I get over 900 megabits. Okay, that's great. As my client, but as a push and a pull for data. Okay, over TCP. From my workstation, I get over 900 from here to the gateway itself. But I'm only getting 250 or 300 through the box. So I need to go ahead and do a before the box and after the box packet capture and see if there's an added delay in there, because I don't know enough about, kernel processing to be able to identify different timings there, but I can identify it on the wire if it's there. So if anyone's got any tips or tricks, slide them my way. I'm very interested in that.
So I'm sorry, because I apparently set the chat into a frenzy on naming schemes, and I love it because it was this and going to the next, and so this is where we landed. So quick successor is going to be new dash quick underscore ng underscore, I think that's supposed to be v2 dash max, maybe it's n2, I don't know. So there you go. It's been going on the entire time. You've been talking about your your gateway. Everyone keeps adding to the and the underscore and the hyphens have to be placed in the correct place, is what he says. So I thought that was great. Hey, Tony, I think it's time.
Yeah, I'm very excited for it, for having the new gateway. And like I said, if anyone's got any cool tricks, tips, ideas, I want to give them a whirl. So send them over. You know ready? The time, you know the rhyme. Buddy, I'm Tony. This is part of the show where I show you a piece of hardware without its chassis. We cover on just the raw circuit boards, and you try to identify it by its circuitry and components alone. We call this part of the show Naked Hardware. Now, we didn't do a show last week, so the Naked Hardware I'm going to show you is from 2 weeks ago. We did put one out there 2 weeks ago, and we did get some guesses, so I'll reveal that in just a minute. And then we have a fresh naked hardware for you tonight that I will get posted right after the show. So Jordan, if you pull my screen up, this was the naked hardware from I was gonna say from last week. Oh my gosh, from 2 weeks ago. Again, I think this was a unit, rather a picture and a set donated by Preston. I really believe that's the case. This one is a fun one. So I know what the answer was because I have the answer. And I tell you what I'll do. I'll go ahead. I'll reveal a guess. I'll reveal the answer. And then I want to go back to this picture and ask a question. Let's see if we can do that. So with this one from 2 weeks ago, looks like I had only one guess on this one, unless someone guessed hour or two, in which case I can review those answers in just a moment. Okay, so let me zoom in here. So this was the guest from last week was Tyler Bible. Tyler Bible's been someone who's come into chat a number of times to support our show, and he guessed a 3560. That's a really good guess. It's a really good guess because we're assuming a 30. Excuse me. Let me start over. A 3650X. That's a really good guess. And I assume he's talking about a Cisco 3650. It's a really good guess. That's not the correct answer. So Tyler, you are wrong. And I didn't see any other guesses come in. Let me reveal what the answer was. And then I want to circle back to the naked hardware picture itself. Over here to my answers folder. And it's loading. Okay. And for some reason, anytime I bring up these images, it goes to my computer grinds to a halt. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, your
this
connection.
Is a
EX4200.
This is nice. A Juniper EX4200. So very good guess with the 3650. Very different architecture, but along the same lines in enterprise class. I think I am a little bit bigger fan of the Juniper myself. However, I think Preston to set me straight. This one says 8 PoE. So I assume that means it has only 8 ports of PoE out of the 48 here on the front. Preston in chat, let me know if that's accurate. So what I want to ask you is, which ports are the 8 PoE?
It's either the first or the last.
Yeah, I don't actually know. So he says that's correct. I realize the chat is a little bit behind our stream, Jordan, before it hits YouTube. Let's see what he says there. He said that's correct, Tony. So let me bring up the original picture, because when I look at the circuitry here and I look at the port banks, I don't see any that are any different. I don't see any circuitry that's any different or anything that would indicate that some are PoE and others aren't, unless it's this right here. Yeah. But I'm not sure. Okay, so he says 0 through 7, the first 8. Okay, so 0 through 7, so that's going to be in the first bank right here. Very cool. Okay, I wasn't sure. So I think that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's 12 ports in the first bank. That's weird for it to just be 8. That seems like it should be the full bay right there, the full bank of ports, like 12 ports.
Well, no.
But the box says 8, it must be 8.
So if you look, you see the actual ASICs and how the ASICs line up. If you count them,
yep.
Right? If you count them, there's 2 ASICs per
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay.
And so really it's split up. While you have a 12-port block, it's really 6 ports or 8 ports at a time. I think it's 8 ports. And each block then is split up into 16. And so those ASICs will, like the ASIC all the way on the left probably controls the first 8 ports. And then you see the last 2 are stacked vertically. That's probably the last 8 port, or the last 16 ports. Or really it would probably be the last 4 ports. Anyway, you get the idea. So a lot of the newer switches, right? You just end up with a single ASIC because ASICs have gotten so fast and so capable. You don't have them split. But this used to be a thing when you considered like where you plugged things into a switch. If you had like a non-modular, just a regular, pizza box type switch, you would want, if you were really looking for resiliency and you were really getting in the weeds, you would go to which ports the ASIC, or which ASICs the ports connected to, and if you had 2 connections, you would split them between ASICs in case an ASIC went bad. or whatever was driving the ASIC went bad. And so like to really split it out. Right. That's absolutely right, Preston. The APOE version was the base model.
I was going to say, I think I've only ever seen this switch in the 4200, 4300 with 48P.
Full PoE.
So all 48 ports. Yep.
Right. Yep.
Yep. Okay. All right. So that was last week's, or excuse me, not last week's, 2 weeks ago, Naked Hardware. And so we had one guest come in from Tyler Bible. Thank you for supporting the show again, Tyler. That guess was incorrect, the 3650X. Let me dive into this week's and see what we get.
No winners.
Naked Hardware. No winners this time. We haven't had many. We've had only maybe one or two with no winners. All right. June 2nd, here we are. Naked Hardware up on the screen. And right after that, I'll get posted on the Network Collective Twitter. Please reply to that Twitter post with the hashtag Naked Hardware. And it opened on the wrong monitor again.
Your computer works really hard when you are opening that. Like your audio starts
crazy.
Clipping and dropping.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. This is the unit. It's an oldie but a goodie.
Yeah, that
Look at
looks
that fan
old.
orientation, right? That's a downward
Effective.
fan.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a downward fan. All right. I think this is a cool one. This is a fun one. The Z-Links chip over there I thought was pretty cool because I know that this is an old unit. And just recently I saw Z-Links at Tech Field Day. And so get to see sort of the old and the new together. So there you go. I'm going to take that off the screen. I will get that posted real quick.
Nice. Well, I think it's time to wrap it up. Like we said before, just for everyone who's watching, everyone who's here, we definitely will not be here next week. And 2 weeks from now is a question mark as well. So we'll see how recovery goes and about whether I feel like Wednesday 2 weeks from now, if I'm up for doing a live stream. But if I am, I'll be here. I imagine it's probability is high on that. So yeah. So I don't know what else to say. We keep giving the spiel, but the spiel, go to networkcollective.com.
Yeah.
It keeps getting shorter and shorter. Go to networkcollective.com. We do lots of cool stuff. If you like what we do, go there. If you haven't gotten involved.
Yeah, the real value of Network Collective is the Slack. There's awesome troubleshooting. There's awesome outage reports. There's awesome discussion about all things hardware, software, networking, and other related. So that's the real value. So if you like what we do here and you like the team and you like everyone who hangs out here, there's much more to get over in the Slack.
Yeah. All right. Good deal. So with that, I think we're going to wrap it up. Tony, it's been lots of fun as always.
Absolutely.
And I guess
May you
we'll
be
see.
back RVing soon and in good health.
Good health. Yeah. I appreciate the nice wishes. Thank you guys. All right. We're out. Have a good night.
All right. See you guys later.